and food. I listen to their stories to document what has happened. In northern Iraq, I tend to the Yazidi population, a unique minority group of non-Muslims selected by ISIS for a special brand of brutality. What they have endured, nobody should know. What they have witnessed can never be unseen. Most in the camp are children who do not know what happened to their parents or siblings. Or worse even, they know exactly what happened to them. The most depressing thing about being in a displaced person's camp is the curse of being in limbo. Why invest in the place where you are today? You won't be there forever, or so you hope. And so everyone, especially the children, become idle. Our team of educators and psychologists design a special curriculum to engage the children and keep their minds active. We use art therapy so they can draw or paint what their minds cannot forget. In Croatia, we help them along their journey, handing out food and water. And in Germany, in partnership with the country's Jewish community and government, we help the refugees cope with the effects of trauma. Few people ask who I am or why I am here, but I know. I know that as an Israeli, it is my responsibility to do my part when and where I can.
To offer healing and hope in the face of despair and devastation.
To show humanity to my fellow men. Thank you.
Someone's portrait is truly a gift. It's all about a relationship. When I talk about AIPAC in Israel, it's sort of like when you paint a person. You never judge them. You celebrate who they are and you meet them where they're at. We have to communicate our message, and our message is about a strong America is a strong Israel.
Thanks so much, Alma. I'm looking forward to seeing you.
So it's absolutely about relationship.
We are Republicans or Democrats.
State has a strong in partnership.
It wasn't until here.
As you all know, Gordon was a founding member of AIPAC, and it was on that trip that I actually visited Bethlehem, and I called my mother on Christmas night from Jerusalem. As you can imagine, it was a very, very special moment, and Gordon always reminded me of it. Gordon helped me as much as anyone has over the years to know and to appreciate the importance of our relationship with Israel and Israel's unique security challenges. And I can't think of a better guy who could have taken me to Israel. It was on my trip in 1983 that Gordon introduced me to Avital Sharansky when her husband, Natan, was still in the Soviet prison. She told me her husband's story over lunch at the King David Hotel in Jerusalem and said she was going to Washington to plead for his release. I asked her, would you mind if I organized a rally in support of your husband on the steps of the Capitol? And so we came together in a bipartisan way to call for Natan Sharansky's release. You know, Gordon had taken Sharansky into the Oval Office to meet with President Reagan, and when the meeting ended, Mrs. Sharansky was told by the President, I will not rest until your husband is free. Sharansky's story has always inspired me from the day that Gordon first introduced me to Avital, but I don't know how many of you here have ever read his book, Fear No Evil. Natan wrote in that book, as I related to him, and he said, I'm glad that you saw it, that when they went to him in the prison, they wanted him to confess something. And they said to Natan, Well, you understand that Galileo even confessed. And think about Sharansky sitting in that prison in that solitary confinement. And he thought to himself and told them, "You're using Galileo against me. No one will ever use me against any other prisoner of conscience." For that, he deserves to always be remembered. I had a phone conversation with Nathan for years, but I never had a chance to meet him. And ironically,
from brain of a patient. So here we are looking at two channels from two electrodes. So this is the raw signal that a physician, the neurosurgeon sees. What we are trying to do, or what we did, is we want to automate this process. So instead of for a physician to interpret the signal, we give him all kinds, we do all kinds of algorithms to simplify and to allow visualization for the physician to see where is the best target to implant. So we produce these maps in which at the end we show the electrode here.
So on the left there, that's the actual depth the probes are going into the brain.
Exactly, and these colors tell him where is the best location to implant these electrodes in a way that he can predict the outcome of the patient after the operation.
So give me, tell me, you mentioned earlier, what are some of the kinds of symptoms, syndromes that are treated with this deep brain stimulation?
as much about it as we do. So there has to be at least a change in philosophy, and there also has to be a change in the cut-up, the money, the spread, because it's too much.
So you're really suggesting the United States should decrease its role in NATO?
Not decrease its role, but certainly decrease the kind of spending. We are spending a tremendous amount in NATO, and other people proportionately less. No good.
What do you say to allies who are watching and they're not happy with what you're saying? What do you say to those allies?
Make them happy. Well, what? They're not happy. What? We're spending a fortune. We are spending tremendous amounts of money, and you look at countries that circle other countries, they're not as bothered by it as we are. So you have to make them happy. But the kind of money, look, we owe $19 trillion. It's going to be $21 trillion very soon with the crazy omnibus budget that they just passed, which is ridiculous. We can't afford to do all of this anymore to the same extent. That was a different time. It was a different age.
Let's talk about what you told the Washington Post earlier today. You suggested the U.S. should be non-interventionist. But you remember in our last debate, you suggested maybe the U.S. would have to deploy 20 or 30,000 troops in Iraq and Syria to destroy ISIS.
What I said is that they tell me, the military tells me, you'd need 20 or 30,000 troops. I wouldn't deploy 20 or 1,000. I'd get people from that part of the world to put up the troops, and I'd certainly give them air power and air support and some military support. But I would never put up 20 or 30,000.
So if the military commander said to you, Mr. President, we need 20 or 30,000 troops to destroy ISIS, so you got to send them into Iraq and Syria, you would say, you said in the debate, you said you'd listen to the generals.
I do listen to the generals, but I would much rather have people in the local area, in the area, put up the troops. To me, that's very important. I don't want to send, we've spent $2 trillion at least in Iraq. We're spending trillions of dollars in the Middle East. You know what we are now? We're further back than we were 15 years ago. We are in such bad shape. The Middle East is a disaster for us. And in the meantime, our country is crumbling. We have a country, the roads are no good, the hospitals are no good, the airports are third world airports. You look at LaGuardia and Kennedy and LAX and all of the airports. And you go to other countries, you go to Dubai and you go to Qatar and you go to these countries, it's like unbelievable. Rolf, we have to rebuild our country.
Let's talk about the subject of your speech today at AIPAC, Israel. Hillary Clinton spoke this morning at the AIPAC conference. Listen to what she said. Listen to this clip.
We need steady hands, not a president who says he's neutral on Monday, pro-Israel on Tuesday, and who knows what on Wednesday, because everything's negotiable. Well, my friends, Israel's security is non-negotiable.
She's talking about you. What's your response?
I agree with her on the last statement. It is non-negotiable. And frankly, she just doesn't know me. She doesn't know my policy. She doesn't know what I'm going to be doing. And she certainly doesn't know what I'm going to be saying today at 5 o'clock.
She says you don't have steady hands.
I have the steadiest hands. Look at those hands. I have the steadiest hands, and far steadier than hers. Look where she got us. I mean, look at Libya. Look at the migration. Look at Benghazi. I mean, here's a woman, it's talk. She's just writing, she's just reading it off a teleprompter. She's just, all she does, believe me, they write that for her. Look at the job. Probably in history, although I think John Kerry may even be worse. I'm not sure after the Iran deal. But look at what she's done.
She's referring to your comment that you wanted to be neutral as a negotiator to try to achieve an Israeli-Palestinian peace agreement.
I would love to be neutral if it's possible. It's probably not possible because there's so much hatred. There's so much going on. I am very pro-Israel. I've always been pro-Israel. I have many awards from Israel, many awards. I've contributed a lot of money to Israel. There's nobody more pro-Israel than I am. We have to protect Israel. Israel is so important to us.
What do the Palestinians need to do for you as president to be neutral in trying to achieve a peace agreement?
I would love to achieve a peace agreement.
What do the Palestinians need to do?
Well, let me tell you. Well, the one thing they have to do is they have to end terror. Okay? They have to stop with the terror. Because what they're doing with the missiles and with the stabbings and with all of the other things that they do, it's horrible. And it's got to end. Now, I have many, many friends from Israel and Jewish friends. Everybody wants to see peace. It seems to be the all-time Olympics in peace, in a deal. Can you make that deal between Israel and the Palestinians? I think the answer is maybe.
But
I never
what
say
else
that.
do they have to do
never
besides
say that.
stopping terror?
Well, I think a primary thing is stopping terror. If you look at what's going on, I think a primary thing is stopping terror. And by the way, in another hour, I'm going to be explaining exactly what I think they have to do and what Israel has to do. And I think you'll be very surprised by what I have to say. But look, one thing they have to do is they have to stop the stabbings, the weapons, the military. What they're doing is incredible. They killed a young man, a young soldier last week. They stabbed him for what? This is crazy. Now, from the time they're born, they're educated a certain way. It's got to change. There's a bad mindset going on, Will.
Back in December, you seemed to question whether Israel would be willing to make the concessions it would need to make to achieve a two-state solution, Israel and Palestine. What are you expecting from Israel? What kind of concessions?
I can say this. I believe that Bibi, and I believe that almost everybody over there wants a deal, wants some deal done. That's what I'm going to be discussing in 1 hour.
Which concessions, for example, would you want Israel to stop building settlements in East Jerusalem and the West Bank?
I'm going to discuss that in 1.5 hours from now.
Can you give us a sense?
I really can't. I mean, I will tell you the biggest thing from my standpoint is there has to be a different way. There has to be a different attitude, because she'll go away for 3-4 days. She'll come back. She'll go. I just don't think she has the stamina. Look, we've got to beat China in trade. We've got to beat ISIS. We've got so many problems in this country. I say she does not have the stamina to be a good president. Plus, she's always got problems, whether it's Whitewater or whether it's the emails. Or it's always drama. It should end. It should end. She shouldn't even be running. Honestly, she shouldn't be allowed to run based on the emails, okay, to be totally honest with you. She's being protected. But Hillary Clinton does not have the stamina, doesn't have the energy, doesn't have the strength to be president, in my opinion.
Mr. Trump, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. And we're just a few hours away now from a CNN presidential primetime event. The Democratic and Republican.
And it was the first of its kind in the nation. And you all please come to Columbus and look at it. It is just beautiful. But I want to tell you that a very good friend of mine, Victor Goodman, a prominent member of the Jewish community in Ohio, asked me to take him over to look at that memorial before it was unveiled. We walked over behind the tarp. I had my arm around his shoulder, and we read the inscription and the memorial together. And I will never forget, when he finished reading it, he buried his head in my chest and wept. And we wept together. And he looked at me and said, "John, thank you for what you have done here. This will exist as long as the state of Ohio exists." As you may know, I served on the House Armed Services Committee for 18 years, and I worked to implement Ronald Reagan's strategy to revitalize our military and to defeat the Soviet Union. Together, my colleagues in Congress and I gave our alliance with Israel meaning. We assured Israel's continuing qualitative military edge by authoring the initial $10 million for the Arrow Iron Dome anti-missile program that we know is so critical to the security of Israel. We supported the Phantom 2000 program, guaranteeing Israeli air superiority with the latest fighters, and the transfer of reactive armor technology that has made the Israeli tanks so effective. I think it can be fairly said that my support and friendship for our strategic partner Israel has been firm and unwavering for more than 35 years of my professional life. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, has in turn been a faithful and dependable friends. The American Friends of Israel are not fair weather friends. They recognize the strategic hinge with Israel and that America's and Israel's interests are tightly intertwined, despite our inevitable disagreements time to time. We share a critically important common interest in the Middle East, the unrelenting opposition to Iran's attempts to develop nuclear weapons. In March of 2015, when the Prime Minister spoke out against the Iran nuclear deal before a joint session of Congress, I flew to Washington and stood on the floor of the House of Representatives that was in session the first time I had visited since we had been in session in 15 years, and I did it to show my respect, my personal respect, to the people of Israel. And I want you all to know that I have called for the suspension of the U.S.'s participation in the Iran nuclear deal in reaction to Iran's recent ballistic missile tests. These tests were both a violation of the spirit of the nuclear deal and provocations that can no longer be ignored. One of the missiles tested had printed on it in Hebrew. Can you believe this? Israel must be exterminated. And I will instantly gather the world and lead us to reapply sanctions if Iran violates one cross T or one dot of that nuclear deal. We must put the sanctions back on them as the world community, together. Let me also tell you, no amount of money that's being made by any business will stand in the way of the need to make sure that the security of Israel is secured and that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon. No amount of money can push us in the wrong direction. And I want you to be assured that in a Kasich administration, there will be no more delusional agreements with self-declared enemies. No more. And as the candidate in this race with the deepest and most far-reaching foreign policy and national security experience, ladies and gentlemen, I don't need on-the-job training. I will not have to learn about the dangers facing this country and our allies. I have lived these matters for decades. One day, and on day one in the Oval Office, I will have in place a solid team of experienced and dedicated people who will implement a long-term strategic program to assure the security and safety of this country and that of its allies, such as Israel. I will lead and make decisions, and my national security appointees will work tirelessly with Israel to counter Iran's regional aggression and sponsorship of terror. We will help to interdict weapon supplies to Hezbollah. We will defeat ISIS in Syria and Iraq. And we will assist Israel to interdict Iranian arms supplies and financial flows to Hamas. And let me stress, I will also work to build and expand on Israel's newfound regional relations as a result of the flawed Iran nuclear deal. Amazing. Israel and the Arab Gulf states are now closer than ever. The bad news here is that the U.S. is not part of this new web of relations. I will work to participate in, expand, and strengthen those ties. Israelis live in one of the world's roughest neighborhoods, and Iran is not the only threat that the U.S. and Israel both face there. ISIS, headquartered in Syria and Iraq, is a mortal peril. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, its spread must be stopped. Since it is dedicated to destruction in Israel, the Middle East, Europe, Africa, Asia, and the United States, it is a threat to all civilization. Unless we recognize and unite around this central truth, we will remain committed to an ineffective and piecemeal approach to dealing with ISIS. Because the world recognizes the existential threat posed by ISIS, I believe I can lead a regional and NATO coalition to defeat ISIS both from the air and on the ground in Syria and in Iraq. We're all in this together. I will also provide support and relief to our common ally Jordan that has shared the brunt of refugee flows, and I will bring our troops home as soon as we, together with our allies, have created a realistic prospect that regional powers can conclude a settlement guaranteeing long-term security there. I will then support allied coalitions as they destroy ISIS's various regional affiliates. My administration will cooperate with our allies to deny Libya's oil as a resource, deny Libya as a platform to mount attacks against Europe, and disband what has become a hub for acts of terror throughout Africa. I will support our common vital ally Egypt in its efforts to destroy. We will bring our troops in Afghanistan back home. Insurgent states such as Iran and networked transnational terrorist actors such as ISIS are not the only threats that Israel, the Jewish American community, and America together face. Believe me, a Kasich administration will work from the beginning to block and eliminate any form of intolerance, bigotry, racism, or anti-Semitism, whether domestic or international, particularly in international bodies. I condemn all attempts to isolate, pressure, and delegitimize the State of Israel, and I will support Congress's efforts to allow this activity both here and in the EU. And I am also very concerned about rising attacks on Israel and Jewish students on our college campuses. I pledge to use... I pledge to use the full force of the White House to fight this scourge, and I will make sure we have the tools needed to protect students from hate speech, harassment, and intimidation while supporting free speech on our college campuses. I have been horrified by the recent spate of Palestinian attacks on Israeli citizens. These are not spontaneous actions of lone wolves. They are part of an unprecedented wave of terror that has involved over 200 attacks on Israelis since October 2015, and they are the outcome of a culture of death that the Palestinian Authority and its forebears have promoted for over 50 years. Indoctrination of hate has long been part of a planned and well-thought-out strategy. Palestinian children are raised in a culture that glorifies martyrdom and the willingness to die in the pursuit of killing or maiming Israelis. Children's textbooks have been filled with vile anti-Semitism. Families of suicide killers receive an annuity after they kill and maim. Imprisoned terrorists need stipends and receive stipends and are guaranteed jobs in the Palestinian civil service at a salary determined by the length of their sentence. Public squares, streets, and even soccer tournaments are named after terrorists. If they truly want peace with Israel, then Palestinians cannot continue to promote a culture of hatred and death. We must make it clear that we will not tolerate such behavior. And I do not believe there is any prospect for a permanent peace until the Palestinian Authority and their friends in Hamas and Hezbollah are prepared to take real steps to live in peace with Israel and recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. And this violence is unacceptable. In the meantime, we can best advance stability in the region by providing Israel our 100% support. We can make sure Israel has what it needs to defend itself with weapons, information, technology, political solidarity, and working quietly to facilitate Palestinian and Israeli efforts at reconciliation. This is what would be expected of a dependable ally. Folks, let me conclude by talking about the greatest alliances are those with countries such as Israel, where we share a community of values. The post-war international system that we and our allies build upon these common values, of course, is under challenger attack. And that's why we have to recommit ourselves to those values. We must not shy away from proclaiming and celebrating them, and why we must revitalize our alliances to defend and expand the international system built upon those values, a system that has prevented global conflict and lifted over 2 billion people out of poverty in the last 70 years. In doing this, we cannot go it alone. We must hang together and be realistic about what we can achieve. We cannot be neutral in defending our allies either. We must be counted on to stand by and invest in our friends instead of abusing them and currying favor with our enemies. For effective governance in our democracy and for the sake of the future, we have to work together at home as well across party and ideological lines whenever and wherever possible. This is exactly what I've done in the course of my career in public service. I reached out to the other side countless times to see how we can sit together and achieve the progress that America wants and deserves. And we all look back to the time of Ronald Reagan and his meetings with Tip O'Neill, where they came together to put America first, politics and partisanship second, and Reagan, as he reached across the aisle to Tip O'Neill, very partisan, legendary, they managed to hammer out deals that gave Reagan victories in revitalizing our economy and implementing the military buildup that ended the Cold War. But it took a conscious effort and an attitude of wanting to cooperate. So, this is what I want to do, Republicans and Democrats who are here today. We need to work together with Congress on an agenda that serves the interests of the nation as a whole. We are Americans before we are Republicans or Democrats. We are Americans. And let me tell you, in regard to that, I will not take the low road to the highest office in the land. I will not do it. Yes, we will rededicate ourselves to reaching the bipartisan national security policy that President Reagan and the Democrats achieved. And you can be assured that my strategic program will include and incorporate Israel as the bedrock partner for our mutual security in the Middle East. Together, we will combat violence incited in Israel itself and, of course, its eternal capital, Jerusalem. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here today in front of so many of you who have contributed so much. I'm humbled by the chance to stand here at this incredible gathering of people who so much love America and so much love our great ally, Israel. You see, we're connected together. It's about civilization. It's about peace. It's about love. It's about togetherness. It's about healing the world. The great Jewish tradition is everyone lives a life a little bigger than themselves. And that tradition has worked its way deep into my soul, where I tell people all across America, dig down deep. The Lord has made you special. Live a life bigger than yourself. Lift others, heal, provide hope, provide progress, and with that, the rest of this century and the relationship between the United States and Israel will grow stronger and stronger for the benefit and mutual security of the world. Thank you all very much, and God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I speak to you today as a lifelong supporter and true friend of Israel. I'm a newcomer to politics, but not to backing the Jewish state. In 2001, weeks after the attacks on New York City and on Washington, and frankly, the attacks on all of us, attacks that perpetrated, and they were perpetrated by the Islamic fundamentalists, Mayor Rudy Giuliani visited Israel to show solidarity with terror victims. I sent my plane because I backed the mission for Israel 100%. In spring of 2004, at the height of the violence in the Gaza Strip, I was the Grand Marshal of the 40th Salute to Israel Parade, the largest single gathering in support of the Jewish state. It was a very dangerous time for Israel and, frankly, for anyone supporting Israel. Many people turned down this honor. I did not. I took the risk, and I'm glad I did. But I didn't come here tonight to pander to you about Israel. That's what politicians do. All talk, no action, believe me. I came here to speak to you about where I stand on the future of American relations with our strategic ally, our unbreakable friendship, and our cultural brother, the only democracy in the Middle East, the State of Israel. Thank you. My number one priority is to dismantle the disastrous deal with Iran. Thank you. Thank you. I have been in business a long time. I know deal making. And let me tell you, this deal is catastrophic for America, for Israel, and for the whole of the Middle East. The problem here is fundamental. We've rewarded the world's leading state sponsor of terror with $150 billion, and we received absolutely nothing in return. I've studied this issue in great detail, I would say actually greater by far than anybody else. Believe me. Oh, believe me. And it's a bad deal. The biggest concern with the deal is not necessarily that Iran is going to violate it, because already, as you know, it has. The bigger problem is that they can keep the terms and still get the bomb by simply running out the clock. And of course, they'll keep the billions and billions of dollars that we so stupidly and foolishly gave them. The deal doesn't even require Iran to dismantle its military nuclear capability. Yes, it places limits on its military nuclear program for only a certain number of years. But when those restrictions expire, Iran will have an industrial-sized military nuclear capability ready to go and with zero provision for delay, no matter how bad Iran's behavior is. Terrible, terrible situation that we are all placed in, and especially Israel. When I'm president, I will adopt a strategy that focuses on three things when it comes to Iran. First, we will stand up to Iran's aggressive push to destabilize and dominate the region. Iran is a very big problem and will continue to be, but if I'm not elected president, I know how to deal with trouble, and believe me, that's why I'm going to be elected president, folks. And we are leading in every poll, remember that, please. Iran is a problem in Iraq, a problem in Syria, a problem in Lebanon, a problem in Yemen, and will be a very, very major problem for Saudi Arabia. Literally every day, Iran provides more and better weapons to support their puppet states. Hezbollah, Lebanon, received, and I'll tell you what, it has received sophisticated anti-ship weapons, anti-aircraft weapons, and GPS systems and rockets like very few people anywhere in the world, and certainly very few countries have. Now they're in Syria trying to establish another front against Israel from the Syrian side of the Golan Heights. In Gaza, Iran is supporting Hamas and Islamic Jihad. And in the West Bank, they're openly offering Palestinians $7,000 per terror attack and $30,000 for every Palestinian terrorist home that's been destroyed. A deplorable, deplorable situation. Iran is financing military forces throughout the Middle East, and it's absolutely incredible that we handed them over $150 billion to do even more toward the many horrible acts of terror. Secondly, we will totally dismantle Iran's global terror network, which is big and powerful, but not powerful like us. Iran has seeded terror groups all over the world. During the last 5 years, Iran has perpetuated terror attacks in 25 different countries on 5 continents. They've got terror cells everywhere, including in the Western Hemisphere, very close to home. Iran is the biggest sponsor of terrorism around the world, and we will work to dismantle that reach. Believe me, believe me. Third, at the very least, we must enforce the terms of the previous deal to hold Iran totally accountable, and we will enforce it like you've never seen a contract enforced before, folks. Believe me. Iran has already, since the deal is in place, test-fired ballistic missiles 3 times. Those ballistic missiles, with a range of 1,250 miles, were designed to intimidate not only Israel, which is only 600 miles away, but also intended to frighten Europe and someday maybe hit even the United States. And we're not going to let that happen. We're not letting it happen, and we're not letting it happen to Israel, believe me. Thank you. Thank you. Do you want to hear something really shocking? As many of the great people in this room know, painted on those missiles in both Hebrew and Farsi were the words, "Israel must be wiped off the face of the earth." You can forget that. What kind of demented minds write that in Hebrew? And here's another. You talk about twisted. Here's another twisted part. Testing these missiles does not even violate the horrible deal that we've made. The deal is silent on test missiles. But those tests do violate the United Nations Security Council resolutions. The problem is no one has done anything about it. We will, I promise we will. Thank you. Which brings me to my next point, the utter weakness and incompetence of the United Nations. The United Nations is not a friend of democracy. It's not a friend to freedom. It's not a friend even to the United States of America, where, as you know, it has its home. And it surely is not a friend to Israel. With President Obama in his final year, yay! He may be the worst thing to ever happen to Israel, believe me. Believe me. And you know it, and you know it better than anybody. So with the president in his final year, discussions have been swirling about an attempt to bring a Security Council resolution on terms of an eventual agreement between Israel and Palestine. Let me be clear. An agreement imposed by the United Nations would be a total and complete disaster. The United States must oppose this resolution and use the power of our veto, which I will use as president 100%. When people ask why, it's because that's not how you make a deal. Deals are made when parties come together, they come to a table and they negotiate. Each side must give up something. Its values. I mean, we have to do something where there's value in exchange for something that it requires. That's what a deal is. A deal is really something that when we impose it on Israel and Palestine, we bring together a group of people that come up with something that's not going to happen with the United Nations. It will only further, very importantly, it will only further delegitimize Israel. It will be a catastrophe and a disaster for Israel. It's not going to happen, folks. And further, it would reward Palestinian terrorism, because every day they're stabbing Israelis and even Americans. Just last week, American Taylor Allen Force, a West Point grad, phenomenal young person who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, was murdered in the street by a knife-wielding Palestinian. You don't reward behavior like that. You cannot do it. There's only one way you treat that kind of behavior. You have to confront it. So it's not up to the United Nations to really go with a solution. It's really the parties that must negotiate a resolution themselves. They have no choice. They have to do it themselves, or it will never hold up anyway. The United States can be useful as a facilitator of negotiations, but no one should be telling Israel that it must be, and really that it must abide by some agreement made by others thousands of miles away that don't even really know what's happening to Israel, to anything in the area. It's so preposterous. We're not going to let that happen. When I'm president, believe me, I will veto any attempt by the UN to impose its will on the Jewish state. It will be vetoed 100%. You see, I know about deal making. That's what I do. I wrote The Art of the Deal. One of the best-selling all-time, and I mean seriously, I'm saying one of because I'll be criticized as if I say the, so I'm going to be very diplomatic. One of, I'll be criticized. I think it is number one, but why take a chance? One of the all-time best-selling books about deals and deal-making. To make a great deal, you need two willing participants. We know Israel is willing to deal. Israel has been trying. That's right. Israel has been trying to sit down at the negotiating table without preconditions for years. You had Camp David in 2000, where Prime Minister Barak made an incredible offer, maybe even too generous. Arafat rejected it. In 2008, Prime Minister Olmert made an equally generous offer. The Palestinian Authority rejected it also. Then John Kerry tried to come up with a framework, and Abbas didn't even respond, not even to the Secretary of State of the United States of America. They didn't even respond. When I become president, the days of treating Israel like a second-class citizen will end on day one. Thank you. And when I say something, I mean it. I mean it. I will meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu immediately. I have known him for many years and will be able to work closely together to help bring stability and peace to Israel and to the entire region. Meanwhile, every single day you have rampant incitement and children being taught to hate Israel and to hate the Jews. It has to stop. When you live in a society where the firefighters are the heroes, little kids want to be firefighters. When you live in a society where athletes and movie stars are the heroes, little kids want to be athletes and movie stars. In Palestinian society, the heroes are those who murder Jews. We can't let this continue. We can't let this happen any longer. You cannot achieve peace if terrorists are treated as martyrs. Glorifying terrorists is a tremendous barrier to peace. It is a horrible, horrible way to think. It's a barrier that can't be broken. That will end, and it'll end soon, believe me. In Palestinian textbooks and mosques, you've got a culture of hatred that has been fermenting there for years, and if we want to achieve peace, they've got to go out and they've got to start this educational process. They have to end education of hatred. They have to end it, and now. There is no moral equivalency. Israel does not name public squares after terrorists. Israel does not pay its children to stab random Palestinians. You see, what President Obama gets wrong about deal-making is that he constantly applies pressure to our friends and rewards our enemies. And you see that happening all the time. That pattern practiced by the president and his administration, including former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who is a total disaster, by the way. She and President Obama have treated Israel very, very badly. But it's repeated itself over and over again and has done nothing to embolden those who hate America. We saw that with releasing the $150 billion to Iran in the hope that they would magically join the world community. It didn't happen. President Obama thinks that applying pressure to Israel will force the issue, but it's precisely the opposite that happens. Already, half of the population of Palestine has been taken over by the Palestinian ISIS and Hamas, and the other half refuses to confront the first half, so it's a very difficult situation that's never going to get solved unless you have great leadership right here in the United States. We'll get it solved one way or the other. We will get it solved. But when the United States stands with Israel, the chances of peace really rise, and rises exponentially. That's what will happen when Donald Trump is president of the United States. We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem. And we will send a clear signal that there is no daylight between America and our most reliable ally, the State of Israel. The Palestinians must come to the table knowing that the bond between the United States and Israel is absolutely, totally unbreakable. They must come to the table willing and able to stop the terror being committed on a daily basis against Israel. They must do that. And they must come to the table willing to accept that Israel is a Jewish state and it will forever exist as a Jewish state. I love the people in this room. I love Israel. I love Israel. I've been with Israel so long in terms of I've received some of my greatest honors from Israel. My father before me, incredible. My daughter Ivanka is about to have a beautiful Jewish baby. In fact, it could be happening right now, which would be very nice as far as I'm concerned. So I want to thank you very much. This has been a truly great honor. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.